Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Today we're joined by Martin Jones, who's Chief Commercial Officer at Vocovo. Hi Martin, how are you?
Hi Simon, yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Really appreciate you coming on, and we'll find out a bit more about Vocovo and some of the ways you're really helping retailers in a second. But before we do that, if you tell us a bit about yourself, Martin, kind of career history, how you landed in the role you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. I left uni about 10 years ago now and joined a number of businesses in manufacturing and industrial machinery, but I'd always had quite a passion for tech. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I left that and started working in the technology sector, in the startup scene, and about just over 3 years ago now, I stumbled upon Vocovo. Joined the team as one of the early employees, and we've been on a really fantastic journey since then, growing every year and winning lots of awards along the way.
Excellent. And I'd describe this podcast as timely for when we're recording it, so late 2021, because tell us a bit about what you do at Vocovo and some of the things you help retailers and offer to retailers.
Yeah, sure. So Vocovo is a intelligent communication system, really. So I like to describe it in 3 layers. The first layer being in-store communication. We have by far the best in-store communication technology. We believe we put our headsets onto colleagues and it gives them brilliant audio quality, diamond crystal voice. And it works in a very unique way in that when you put a headset on, you join a conference or a group and you're able to listen to anything that's going on in that conference. So we can have up to 1,000 people on the conference at any one time, and 6 people can talk at one time, and that's really a USP for us. It allows people to have natural language conversations. Really easy to use. Staff absolutely love it. Layer 2 is allowing other systems or people to have access to the conference. So our 2 big ones there are telephony. So customers or anyone really can call into the store and it will join the conference upon request, and a person will be able to take that phone call offline and go and answer it on the headset. So stores are no longer tied to deck phones or customer service desks to answer phones. Anybody in the store, if permitted, can answer phone calls and make phone calls as well off the headsets. And the second part of that level is customer call points. So if you go into many of our stores, you'll see Vocovo call points around the store, typically at unmanned areas like click and collect or fitting rooms, etc. And customers can go to those call points, press the button, and again, quite uniquely, colleagues can have 2-way conversations with customers. So I, as an associate, may be at the back of the store, maybe in the click and collect warehouse, and someone may be at the front of the store. I can answer their request and say, "Hey, good morning. I'm actually in the click and collect warehouse right now. Can you give me your order number and I'll bring it with me on the way out to you?" So it removes that doorbell sensation, I suppose, for customers where they ask for help and they're not really sure if anyone's coming or not. And then layer 3 is the area of the business that we're putting a lot of investment into at the moment, which is connecting our headsets and our colleagues to the future, I suppose, the connected store. So IoT devices such as self-scan checkouts, such as security cameras, such as temperature controls on fridges and ovens. These things can communicate to all the colleagues in the store if there's an issue or when they need assistance. And also communicating outside of the store, we've worked a lot to connect the head office. So no longer is the communication path with head office an email to the store manager who then puts it on a notification board. Out the back, we're giving senior personnel within retailers the ability to talk to 5,000 colleagues, 10,000 colleagues, all in real time. That is the Vocovo system. Level 1, in-store communication, helping find efficiencies. Level 2, external communication, so allowing customers and suppliers talk to the system, and then moving on to the connected store, and that's where we see real growth in the business over the next couple of years.
Amazing. Some really good points you made there. Just circle back on a couple, I think, that are quite timely. Certainly, within retail, we're seeing click and collect has grown over the last 2 years for obvious reasons that, we weren't allowed out for a while and then we didn't want to be out for a while. But actually lots of those retail journeys in click and collect are still in their infancy, some quite broken, long wait times, difficult to get the retrieval parcels, or you go to a desk and then it's 3 miles behind the store in a warehouse or upstairs in a cupboard. So I can really see how it helps there. And that whole connectivity piece. So as we see things like digital shelf edge labels come into play, as we see all those other bits of tech that retailers are really starting to drive through now based on upward cost pressures that are coming from national living wage, I can see how that really fits in. One thing, I suppose, maybe in the future vision, and we'll come on to plans for the future later, do you have the ability to connect into contact centres? Because I know lots of organisations struggling to recruit in that area. So can you take the load off at store level when it's quiet at the moment, or is that in the future roadmap?
Potentially, yes. So our system has telephony on it. So if a retailer has a VoIP cloud system and there's traffic at the contact centre, they can be rerouted to the store, and Vocova colleagues can answer that. Yes.
Interesting. So that those listening that are struggling to recruit generally, certainly in contact centres, there may be a way to, I suppose, fulfil some of that downtime in stores as well. Needs thinking through, but another interesting angle.
Absolutely possible, for sure.
I get that part. I suppose the bit we end up potentially working together on, or the retailer will ask us to help, is more in the operational efficiency of it. So what kind of things does it prove in terms of value of adding the headsets? Clearly there's a cost to buying or renting the headsets, and retailers typically for any investment want to try and offset that with an operational efficiency. So what kind of things do you look at when you're in initial conversations with a client and they'll be saying, okay, so I understand how much it is to do this. I need to find some of that money from store salary through operational efficiencies to offset.
Yeah, sure. So we try and work as a partner with retailers. So we look at a whole number of things, and I think it's important to say that in my time at Vocova, I've never found a customer who rolls the system out for one reason.
Yeah,
it's normally a pie chart of different things. But if I go from the top, something we look at straight away is the amount of walking colleagues do in store. So we do lots of different assessments with colleagues where we ask them to wear pedometers for 2 weeks or a month, and then we give them the headsets and we look at we give them the headsets and we ask them to wear pedometers for another 2 weeks to a month, and then we compare and contrast and see how much walking time in the store we've reduced. We look at time and motion studies with the stores, so we will typically listen into a headset all day, and we will be recording all the things that are asked over the conference, as we call it. And then at the end of the day, we'll take the headsets off the colleagues and say, okay, how would you do that without the headset? And we measure the difference in time. So, for example, if I was a supermarket front-end supervisor and I was asked for a price on something, typically I would then have to go and find that item and have a look at the shelf edge label. That could take me a minute or two. Whereas with Vocova, I can just ask and someone closer can get me an answer within 20, 30 seconds. So we compare the task efficiency. We look at colleague morale. So we often do colleague surveys before and after, putting Vocova in, and we look at the soft benefits that generates in terms of feeling safer, feeling more connected to their manager, and even feeling more connected to their business because they feel like they know what's going on more. We do the same with customers. So we survey customers before Vocova goes in, and then we survey afterwards and say, did you notice that the colleagues are wearing headsets today? Did that help you in your shopping experience in the store? Big one as well is security. So, retailers look to see if stores with headsets in are, producing a lower crime rate in terms of the headsets being a deterrent, but also looking at their shrink levels to see if with the headsets, the headsets are connecting colleagues and security guards often. Is the shrink rate lowering because they're able to stop theft as well? We look at, as I mentioned earlier, telephony. So looking at old telephony systems and providing savings by routing your telephony into Vocovo. You're no longer having to run a Vocovo system and a telephony system in the store. And then as we move on into the connected store, we're looking at really new things like, can we save produce when a freezer goes down because the system will alert colleagues immediately through the headsets? Can we provide better customer service because we're able to be notified on self-scan checkouts and things like that? So it really is a pie chart, but hopefully that I've given you quite a few examples that we can talk to.
Yeah, no, some really good ones there. What I do want to kind of discuss in a bit more detail is the whole security angle piece. Again, I think we're working towards a world of upward cost pressures. So as we speak today, supply is difficult, cost of shipping's rising. Government have announced national living wage increase to £9.50 from April next year. My assumption is by 23 that will tip £10. So we're going to be entering this world where potentially we've got less colleagues in our retail stores because it costs us more. We're going to automate some stuff, and we're going to do some stuff with all the stock we have and the way we merchandise to make things simpler. But ultimately, from a shrink point of view, that potentially makes us more vulnerable because we've got less people to patrol the store. And I think all the stats say the biggest way to decrease shrink is to have people there because they're a deterrent. So the more people you have, the less chance you've got of somebody taking something off the shelf, putting it in a bag, taking it down the back aisle, the tags off, whatever that might look like.
Yeah.
So I know you've got some kind of interesting things that you can do with tannoys and calling and triggering things from the headset. So it'd be good to hear about that.
Yeah, so security is a real passion of ours. I think everyone in the retail sector has seen the hard time that colleagues have been going through, and especially with the abuse and violence that have been brought towards retail staff. I think Vocovo can help in many ways. So, the most simple one, as I've discussed already, is a deterrent. We have one retailer where they also have franchise stores, and one of their stores has Vocovo, and only about 6-7 stores down the high street, one of their stores doesn't have Vocovo. And I was talking to a manager there once who said, he was the one who didn't have Vocovo, and he said, I wish we'd get the headsets, because ever since the other stores had the headsets, we get hit more often because they see it as a deterrent in that store. So I think just having the headsets on colleagues is absolutely beneficial to that. But then you can get into the smarter stuff we can do, as you've alluded to. So as I've mentioned, the headsets can connect to security channels as well. So colleagues can call security much faster using the headsets if there's a security guard in the store. We can also allow the headsets to communicate out of the store. So whether that be to the police or whether to a central monitoring system, we do that as well. As I've mentioned, the headsets can connect to cameras. So I know facial recognition hasn't, really took off in the UK yet because of GDPR. But for example, if the IP cameras recognise known criminals in the store, it would alert the headsets if they're allowed to. Also, what we've done with one retailer is we've allowed colleagues to trigger the PA system remotely. So if they're walking along an aisle and they can see a theft taking place, they don't have to approach that person. What they can do is just using the headset, trigger announcements over the tannoy that say this store is being security monitored and you are being recorded. And I was in one of those stores recently, and they said it's amazing the amount of time that when we trigger that announcement, you see people go, I'm going to put that back and I'm going to leave the store. I hope that kind of gives you an example of some of the stuff we're doing, and we're looking all the time at other things we can do with the retailers to help not only security and shrink, but also the safety of colleagues as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety is paramount, and if we can make those colleagues be more at ease at work every day or feel less vulnerable, that's a massive benefit. And clearly, as a retailer, if I can make the people that are going to come in and try to steal feel that the shop next door or down the road may be an easier target, then you move that problem to somebody else. And as more people adopt, then it becomes a lot more difficult to do. So I think that's really powerful stuff that you're doing there.
Yeah, I think one thing I've just remembered as well was we also do store-to-store communication. So, for example, I know when we were talking before this podcast, you mentioned about organised crime gangs coming into an area and hitting a number of stores.
Yeah.
Vukovo gives stores the ability that if they've just got hit, that they can then go to our system and send a message out to all the stores in their area code saying, we've just been hit by an organised crime gang. Please be vigilant. We suspect they'll be attacking other stores in the next few hours. And it just gets a warning out almost instantaneously to all the stores in that area.
Anything that can be done to deter, because that's the primary mechanism. Confrontation clearly isn't something that you want your colleagues to be doing. So yeah, deterrent has always proved to be the best mechanism. But collectively, across the high street, joining those together clearly makes it a lot more difficult for the people that are doing naughty things as a day job, shall we say.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think you wanted to talk about Dunelm specifically and some of the work you've been doing there.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've kind of mentioned it already without naming them. So Dunelm have been a customer of ours for a long time now. They use our headsets, they use our call points, and they also use our telephony system as well. They removed their old telephony system and run all of their telephony through Vukovo. But recently, we were talking to them about future innovations we can do, and they were really intrigued by, as I mentioned, the PA announcement, allowing all the colleagues in the store the ability to trigger, at the moment, preset messages from the PA. So how it works is that we load a number of PA messages and instructions into our system, and then any colleague can go into the menu and say, trigger this message. The future is that they'll be able to just talk directly to the PA and make ad hoc announcements too. But where Dunelm have really seen benefit in that is in theft and deterrent, as I've mentioned. And, we put it into one of their stores and they very quickly rolled it out to a lot of their stores, if not all of their stores now, because they saw such fantastic benefits from crime deterrent, as we've discussed. If they see people in the store, the colleagues can very quickly trigger the announcements that let people know in the store that the store's being recorded, there's security, that colleagues have noticed crime in the store. And as I said, I was in a local store the other day and I was asking about it, and a lady there said, "Oh, it's been a godsend. It really has made a huge difference to our operations." And we're really thankful to Dunelm for allowing us to do a case study on it as well, which is on our website if you want to read more.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great example of the type of shop. So, a big box, typically retail park type of organisation, high stock density, lots of aisles, lots of products. So from a shrink point of view or theft point of view, really easy to wander in under the radar, move around the aisles potentially without seeing a colleague and move out. So, yeah, I think that's a real sweet spot for where this type of innovation helps drive those stop loss figures down. It's a great example. Then in terms of the future, and I know you said you're focusing on some of the developments and you've talked about some of those, any other things that you're working on in terms of product development, in terms of connecting to devices? I think you mentioned SCO at the start of the product and kind of the age 25 verification or remote monitoring. Are there any other things that you guys are thinking about?
Yeah, the big step for us now, Simon, is interaction. So the system takes lots of notifications, as we've discussed, so from IoT, etc. The next big step for us that we're working on at the moment is interaction with machines. So you mentioned SCO there. Not only will the SCO say age 25 verification required at SCO 2, we want to give the colleagues the ability to talk back and say, I'm in line of sight. I can see that person is clearly over age 25. Authorise the transaction, and we have some really neat ways to, monitor to make sure that people aren't doing that from the warehouse, for example. Yeah. So that's a big step for us, and also connecting to the head office more. Using the likes of Microsoft Teams or Slack. When messages are sent to the store. Being able to respond to those messages over the headset. So there's a real interaction piece for us that we're working on, which is giving colleagues that ability that when they get notifications and messages that they don't necessarily have to travel to the scene. They can action stuff remotely. And we think, again, that will, bring more efficiencies, more customer experience, and, more uptime for colleagues with that innovation.
And I suppose the possibilities are endless as people maybe start to move to more digital interactions with customers in the future. I think click and collect is clearly going to grow and morph into bigger products or even just different transactional types. If you then take this theory and put it in quick service restaurants, you've got Deliveroo and Uber Eats and all those other channels which are starting to come in, which are great from a revenue point of view and additional services point of view, but actually from an operational point of view can be really tricky when you've got face-to-face customers, digital customers, drivers, bike riders, all vying to pick up or speak to probably the same or a reduced number of colleagues. So I think you've got a really interesting future ahead and lots of challenges to come, but clearly can help solve the challenges of those clients that you work with today and new ones in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on that point, the system now is looking at roles-based users as well. So you can log on to a headset. So to that point of, instead of bombarding every colleague with every message, we're working with workforce management businesses to be able to say, well, these messages should only go to these colleagues. And these messages should only be responded to by these colleagues. So to that point, just trying to control the traffic and make sure that the notifications and the actions and the tasks we're asking of colleagues are going to the right person and not going to everyone all of the time.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense to me. Brilliant. Well, Martin, it's been brilliant to hear about you, about Vekova. As I say, I think at the time of recording this is really, really, really timely. Lots of retailers already on board with you, but certainly I know lots struggling with some of those issues that you've described and we've talked about. So where's the best place for people to find you if they want a further chat?
At vekovo.com. There's contact us there. We have a brilliant team of salespeople who would get back to you straight away. And equally, hopefully we're post-COVID now and we'll be attending a lot of the big retail shows next year. I know we're at NRF in January and Eurosis in February and Retail Expo in April. So I hope to bump into lots of your listeners there as well, Simon.
Brilliant, good stuff. And final question from me is, what's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
Oh, that's quite an interesting one. I think for me, stay focused on the thing you want to achieve. I think especially Vekova and high growth businesses, there are so many opportunities. There are so many avenues you can take that it's the famous Steve Jobs quote of strategy is choosing what not to do. And I think that's been really applicable to us over the last 3 or 4 years. So
thanks for your time, Martin. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up, and we'll stay in touch and maybe we pick up in 12, 18 months again and see how much of that tech's been delivered and where the direction's travelling.
I'd love to, Simon. Thanks for having me.